Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this Werewolf video series from BlenderCookie.com. We're going to pick up where we left off on the previous video and go ahead and complete the teeth and maybe make a few adjustments to our werewolf head. Now, just a little forewarning in advance, I apologize if things are a little bit choppier than usual or not quite as quick. Since I am currently abroad getting ready for the Blender conference, I'm working on my laptop versus my desktop, and so things aren't quite as speedy as they normally would be, but they should suffice. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and start in on the teeth. And so what we want to do is first go ahead and leave sculpt mode from the werewolf head. And do remember that we did run into a bug or not necessarily a bug, but some behavior that isn't necessarily ideal, that when we work on lower levels than our highest one, we cause some disconfiguration here. And in most cases, this would be a problem, but since we're only going to be working with the final highest level, we don't really care. As long as the highest level is fine, it doesn't matter. Now, this could have been avoided if we hadn't gone back and worked on those lower levels after we'd already subdivided. But for the time being, since we're already this far along, we're not going to worry about it. But when we get to sculpting the human head side, we will go ahead and take all of that into account, of course. So what I want to do is I'm just going to switch to side view. I'm going to hit Alt-H to unhide, because you remember that I've got the original teeth here that were hidden. And what I want to do is just go ahead and select those. I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And I now just want to very quickly reorientate this to create my to make these fit better. And apologies here, since I'm using a tablet, sometimes I have trouble with selecting, just my problem. But I'm just going to kind of move these around real quickly here, kind of line it up to fit, just using the basic transforms and such. Moving this over here, move this whole area right up here. Just going to move this back, and then what I want to do is I want to go in and adjust some of these edge loops here to get them a little more evenly spaced. So I'm just going to Alt right click to select this one, hit Control E, and edge slide it back just like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom one here. I just want to make sure that everything is evenly distributed throughout all the loops in order to ensure that I'm getting a nice even sculpt. So I'll slide these ones along as well. Select this one here. I'll slide it back. And I'm going to go ahead and, now that I have the basic shape down, I'm just going to go ahead and select my werewolf head, and I'm just going to hide it. I'll also select the eyes and hide them so that I can really just focus on just getting a nice even mesh for the mouth. Grabbing these, I'm going to move these back as well. Pull that up. I do apologize if there's some background noise. There's some construction going on in one of the apartments a couple over from me, and every now and then it gets a little bit loud, but hopefully, since my mic is directional, it's not picking up too much of it. Okay, I want to go ahead and select this one here, although I want to deselect this right down here. Just Control E, edge slide that back. I'll go ahead and slide or grab all of this right in here. I'm just going to pull it back along the y-axis, take it back like that. Maybe take it back a little bit further. I'm going to go ahead and select the tongue, or the tip of the tongue right here. And I'm just going to pull it up about like this. I'll select this one as well, pull it up. So again, the main thing I'm doing is just being sure that everything is nice and even. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave edit mode real quick by hitting Tab and then hit Alt-H to reveal my mesh again so I can kind of see how everything is looking. And I'm going to go ahead and jump this up to level 4 real quick, which is close enough to my final result to really see what I'm looking at, but not so high as to kind of slow everything down, or at least slow it down unnecessarily. So now I'll just do some final adjustments here. Maybe I'll go ahead and pull all this right here forward just a little bit, taking this forward a little more. Okay, again, I'm going to hide everything else, so I'll just select it all and hit Shift H. I'm going to select all this here. I'm going to, Control E, edge slide, just slide it back a bit more. I'll slide these forward a bit. Take this one down. I can take these back, And remember, the key here is that we're never adjusting the actual mesh, so we're never adding to or taking away from the mesh, because this way, when we go to add our shape keys between this and our original mouth mesh, then they'll be able to morph between each other perfectly without causing serious problems. And in fact, if you change your mesh at all, if you delete any vertices, add any vertices, you won't even be able to add the shape keys between them, and so you'll basically do all your work for nothing. And so that's the main thing. We can adjust the shape any way that we want, as long as you never adjust the actual structure of the mesh. At least as a general rule of thumb. Okay, and I'm just about ready to call this quits. Okay, I'm just going to do one last check by unhiding everything with Alt-H. So you can see here, I maybe need to go ahead and pull some of these areas out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select these two vertices. I'm going to hit O to turn on my proportional editing. And I'm just going to hit G and pull them out along the x-axis a little bit. Maybe I'll scale down my influence just a little bit. Just pull that out to there. Pull this back a bit. Pull the inside back in just a tad. And that looks pretty close. You know, it doesn't have to be exact, because we're going to be able to make any changes that we need to in sculpting, or at least subtle changes. And that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to do, well, no, we won't worry about it. Okay, we're going to save this. And what I want to do now is go ahead and begin sculpting this. So I'm just going to apply my mirror modifier. Remember that since on my original mesh, which we can find over on layer 1, we still have a mirror modifier on this, so all we'll need to do to make these exact again is just apply the mirror modifier, and we'll be good to go. So going back to layer 2 here, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go ahead and add in a multi-resolution modifier, and I'm just going to go ahead and subdivide this. We don't have to worry about the shape too much, because we've already got it mostly. So I'm just going to go ahead and subdivide it 3 times to give me enough detail to start doing the basic teeth. Although before I do that, let's go ahead and jump into sculpt mode. I'm going to use my grab brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull some of these over just a little bit and just kind of do some minor shaping work before I add in too much detail. Okay, just a little bit there, a little bit there. Pull that forward. I'm going to go ahead, just so that we can see a good indication, I'm going to go ahead and select the werewolf head. I'm going to take it all the way up to level 5 so we can really see it. We don't notice too much of a slowdown at that point, and so it's okay to go ahead and use both of them in or at the full level. Okay, and I feel like maybe the gums on there are a little bit too, or the lips are a little bit too big, so I'm just going to go ahead and intersect that just a little bit. It really won't cause any problems. Smooth that out just a tad. Bring that back. Okay, now so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab my inflate brush, and I'm just going to inflate these areas right in here. Although you'll notice that some of them are deflating as I draw across them, so I need to hit select everything in edit mode and hit Control N to recalculate the normals. And you'll notice that everything has gone absolutely haywire. So what we need to do actually is go ahead and go back into object mode, take our sculpt all the way down to 0, delete the higher, select everything, hit Control N to recalculate the normals. And if we hit N to bring up our properties panel, we can go ahead and display the face normals to ensure that everything's going the right way. And it looks like they are. So that looks good. And since we've done very little work, it's okay to go ahead and have that happen. So now we can just subdivide it 3 times again real quick. And we'll just very quickly go in and kind of redo what we were doing. Won't take but a second here. That is something that you want to always try and remember to do, that I have a bad habit of forgetting, is to always recalculate the normals before you go into sculpting, because you will tend to have those problems if you change anything. But you know, you could always get away with just not changing it, but then you'll find exactly what happened to me is that your brushes will behave differently, because a lot of the brushes work based on it pushes it along the normal with things like the inflate brush. And so if your normals are facing opposite directions, then you might have one face going in, one face going out. And so you really want them going the right direction beforehand, even if it would maybe mess you up a little bit. Okay, here we go. Now we're good to go. So again, I'll just save my file. And maybe I'll go ahead and pull this area up just a little bit back here. And now I'll go ahead and switch back with my inflate brush with I. And I just want to draw over these areas because I want to make them a little bit wider. And so I'm just drawing over this because I want to make the gums a little bit wider, because really right now they're pretty thin. So using the inflate just allows me to do that pretty easily. And along this way, if I want, I can go ahead and go all the way down here, and I believe, yeah, underneath the options panel, I can go ahead and enable the location lock. So I can just lock the Z axis, and now things will only be able to expand sideways. So this way I'm not adding more depth to it as well. We'll just keep expanding this just a bit. We'll make sure to go a little bit further in the back gums back here, since they've got the molars and such. Because we're actually going to sculpt all of the teeth directly out of here. On some of these edges where it's just getting a little sharp because it wasn't affecting all of the faces underneath, I was just going in and holding down shift to use my smooth brush real quickly to just lightly smooth that up. And that's looking pretty good. I kind of like where that's going, so I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go ahead and disable the lock. And I'm just going to go back. And at this point, I'm just going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to select the head mesh, and I'm just going to hide it along with the eyes, so that I can just focus more on just the teeth. And so going back into sculpt mode now, for one, I can go ahead and maybe inflate some of these other areas that weren't getting it as much. Okay, and maybe I'll inflate the edges of the tongue as well. This way I don't have to, I can kind of just keep doing it along the way. Since I'm going to be subdividing it again here in a second, I want to try and do some of the work on things with the lower resolution, because it's a lot easier to deform things. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, so that I can work on the tongue, I'm just going to go ahead and hit Alt-B, and I'm just going to hide a portion of this top by just dragging over it like this. Oops, except I actually want to go the other way, so I'll hit Alt-B and then just drag across the tongue here, and I'll hide everything below it. So now I can get a much better idea of what I'm looking at. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my clay brush again, which you remember I've got the clay strips enabled. And so I'm just going to kind of draw over some of these areas, add in some extra volume to them, put in a crease down the center of the tongue of sorts. I'm not doing a lot of work, just kind of some basics to get a better idea of what I'm looking at. Maybe I'll go ahead and hit Alt-B again, which will reveal everything, and then Alt-B again. I'm just going to drag across just the tongue, thus hiding a large portion of the underside as well. And I'll just add in some extra volume right in here for the kind of the muscles underneath the tongue. Okay, and that's just enough to kind of give a hint at it. So I'll go ahead and hit Alt-B again. And what I want to do now, this is definitely one of those times where it'd be great to have the new masking features that Nicholas Bishop has developed over at Google Summer of Code, but unfortunately those haven't been implemented yet, and probably won't be for some time, simply because we're in feature freeze right now while the developers are trying to squash all the bugs in 2.5. But that's okay. For the time being, we can go ahead and make do, because what I want to do now is I'm going to use the snake hook brush, which you can easily access just by selecting one of the brushes and just type in SN real quick, and I'll quickly pull up the snake hook. And what this does is basically acts like the grab tool, but as you grab, it releases vertices as you go, along with grabbing new ones as you go, such that you can kind of just pull down little sections at a time. And so what I'm going to use this for is actually pulling down the bases of the teeth. So I'll pull down the main canine right there, maybe pull up the bottom one there, pull down some subtle hints of where some of the other ones are going to go. You notice I'm not doing much, I'm just kind of getting some basic indications of where things are, because right now I don't have the geometry to really put in a lot, and so I want to keep things very, very basic. But by just putting in some subtle hints, I can get a better idea of how things are going to work. Okay, I'll do some small ones right in the front. Maybe use a smaller brush, pull that one up, and I'll pull that one up, pull one down here, and another one here. And so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm also using the smooth brush in a few places to help kind of smooth it back. Okay, this is enough to get started, and so what I want to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and subdivide my mesh to get me up to the next level, and now I can go ahead and continue using my snake brush. I'll just draw down, draw up here. Then on these ones, I can go ahead and pull down a small tooth right there, grab a slightly larger one there, another one here, much larger one here. And so I can just very quickly shape in all the different teeth. And now do note that I'm not making this anatomically accurate. You know, I may not have the correct number of teeth. I may have too many, maybe not all the right shapes for an actual wolf head, but we're more interested in the techniques and the actual anatomical accuracy for the time being. But as long as we get something that looks fairly close I hope that not too many people will gripe at me. Okay, here we go. Just about there. So I'm just doing some subtle tweaking, kind of getting some of the better shapes in there. You notice right here, I can kind of start to get the shapes of the molars and such. So I'll pull up an edge here to start getting the squared off edge. Same thing right in here and here. And you could use the grab brush for this as well, but I find that the snake hook brush works a little bit better, gives you a little bit smoother results. And it's good to kind of do it in a step at it, or a couple steps at a time, so you don't do the entire tooth in one go, or else you'll tend to just get a very stretched mesh. So it's good to work with a slightly larger brush, pull down kind of the main form, and then go with a smaller brush and grab just kind of the tip and pull it down. And you'll get something that's much smoother than if you were to do it all in one go. Here I can just kind of curve the teeth back or forward. Okay, this is getting really close, so I'm going to go ahead and I want to do just a little bit of work on the tongue again with my clay strips brush. So I'm just going to hit Alt B and drag as closely as I can around the tongue there, just so I can kind of see it a little better. Again, I'm just going to draw in some of this. Creating a kind of rough texture with the clay strips works really well, particularly for something like the tongue that is a little bit rougher. You notice I keep getting a hole in my mesh there where things aren't behaving like they're supposed to, and so I just need to keep undoing and then going back and doing it again. If it keeps repeating, then try going back a couple steps and see what it was that was causing it maybe. Or if it's, since it's in the area like the back there, you don't really need to worry about it. Blender Sculpt system does continuously keep getting better and better, but there are of course those few things that do still cause problems, but that's all right. As long as there's workarounds, we can definitely make do. The other thing to note is that Jason Wilkins, the developer that did all of the wonderful Google Summer of Code work that gave us all the new brushes and much better brush behavior and things like that, he does have more work on his sculpt branch that he did that is not included in the official release right now, but that tentatively, my understanding at least, I could be completely wrong, and someone please feel free to correct me if I am, is that it's going to be probably included after 2.6 is finalized, and so we definitely have some more sculpt improvements coming along in the future that we're not seeing right now, but will definitely, of course, as with any improvements, be very welcome. Okay, just do a little bit more right in here. Okay, now I'll just go ahead and leave that as is. So again, I'm going to hit Alt B, and then what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and subdivide my mesh yet again. And this starts to give me a really good amount. Oops, I actually went 2, so I'll delete the higher one. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go in with my, first I'm going to use my crease brush, I'm going to start drawing around the shape of the gums so that I can start getting a clear indication of how the teeth are shaped. And so I'll just draw in like this, kind of tracing my details such that then I can go in with things like the clay brush and really then just sculpt them in very quickly. So you can kind of think of it as sculpting in guides. On some of these areas where I want recesses in the gum, I might go ahead and draw up with a crease, because even though it may look sharp right now, it'll be pretty soft once I'm done sculpting. And so again, this helps just show my the whole target idea of what I want things to look like, and just gives me a good sculpting guide. Okay, and just a little bit more right in here, a little bit more right in there. Take that down, some in there and there. Another one right there. Some of these I can draw with a positive direction along the edge of the gum line, and that will help just kind of raise that up from the tooth. Sure, save my file as I go. Okay, this is coming along nicely. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more reshaping. We're not worrying too much about the inside of the teeth, but we do want to try and get at least some of the inside here. You know, if we were doing a full production model, then obviously we would do every angle. But since we're doing this tutorial, we don't want to just get everything too repetitive. And so I'm going to just kind of forego on some of those areas just to speed things up just a little bit. One thing I'm going to use my grab brush and just kind of reshape this tooth right in here. Kind of pull some of those areas in. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide yet again. I'm going to use my grab brush with a, well, no, actually we'll just stay like it is. I'll actually want to use my snake hook brush. I'm just going to pull up some of these teeth right in here, make them a little bit sharper. Pull these down. I can also pull down some of the areas in between the teeth. Although here's where I like to use my grab brush, and I'll put on a sharp curve, and I can just pull down in between the teeth, and that will help get a much better gap between them. You can also use it for creating a little bit more square edges on things. Okay, so I'm just kind of reshaping some of these teeth in here, getting some slightly sharper results in some cases, adding in extra detail on others. And curve the teeth just a little bit more. And a good bit of extra width to these ones back here. And we'll do the same thing for these ones. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my crease brush again by hitting Shift C. I'm going to use it to really kind of shape in all of my teeth. So using it, I can kind of square up the edges very quickly. Or in the case of the pointer teeth, I can kind of add in a ridge to them of sorts if I want, or to just add in the nice sharp edge to them. Or in between the teeth, I'll draw around the teeth a bit more. And we're not going to go too much further on this, as I don't want to use too much time. Get a little clearer indication of the separation between the teeth. Okay, at this point I'm going to go ahead and jump up one more level. And what we're going to do, so we'll be at level 7 here. And now we're going to use our clay brush. And make sure to save my file before I do anything else just in the case of a crash or anything like that. Since I am getting up to quite a few polygons, you'll notice that I'm up to, well, actually I'm right at 2 million for this, which I may need to actually jump down one notch. I may not be able to sculpt on this very well, but we'll see. So let's just go in with our clay brush, and actually I can still sculpt pretty well. So I'm just going to use my clay strips. And I'm also going to go ahead and go into edit mode, select everything, and W, and shade smooth, so we can see this in its actual smooth form. Now just sculpting over this. You notice I'm sculpting in between the teeth to just ensure that it looks more like gums between them rather than teeth joining with other teeth. Okay, almost done here with the top. So I'm just going to go in here and do the bottom real quick like. Something I can do too to just kind of speed up my view is I'll just switch to side view, and right now I have my go, and I'm going to go ahead and just hide a large portion of the top by hitting Alt B and just drag across like this. And I'll wait just a second as my computer catches up. Actually, my computer catching up was in fact my computer crashing, or Blender crashing more like. And so, unfortunately, I lost a little bit of the sculpting work that I'd done, so I've just redone the whole top portion, and now I'm going back in and doing the bottom. So just kind of got caught up about to where we were, but since it's all pretty much the same kind of work, it's not a big loss by any means. And so, I'm just going to continue on doing this kind of basic sculpt, or the fun sculpting right down here, just kind of putting in some of the detail work, but still being pretty loose about it, partially just because of time constraints, but also just because I kind of like the loose style, the kind of sketchy style. And also because since working on my laptop here, I'm not able to take things up as to the notch that I would really like to. And also just while doing a video tutorial, it's also very hard to take it up to that notch anyway, even if I were working on my desktop machine. And so I'm just, keeping things kind of loose, but just going with it and seeing where it goes. Add in a little bit more right in here. Oh, real quick, just switch over to my crease brush and just kind of draw on a crease there, maybe a crease there. You notice I'm a little low on geometry right in this area, so I might use my smooth brush to kind of smooth it out, to kind of help even out some of that geometry, and then switch back to my clay brush and build that back up just a little bit. Like I said, we're almost done here. One trick for the clay brush too, if you're using the clay strips like I am, is to vary your brush stroke speed based on your spacing setting actually underneath stroke. You can actually kind of depend on how smooth it'll be based on your spacing. So if you take this spacing down, you'll get a much smoother result, although you also get a much slower result. So it also kind of just depends on how smooth you want it to be, or just what look you're looking for, and also just the speed of your machine. And basically what that means is just how often does it apply a new set of deformation. Okay, just a little bit more right in here. You notice there I was just drawing in, pushing down by holding down Control there for a second and then drawing back over it, and it just allows me to create a crease pretty easily. Well, not really a crease, but more of like a valley. I might try and add in a little extra volume over the gums, where the teeth would be going down into them to kind of show the separation between them a bit more. Okay, and real quick, let's just go ahead and let's try and do just a little bit of work here just on the inside of the gums, just to get a little bit of detail in there, even though we won't be able to see a whole lot of it, just so that from certain angles, if you happen to be able to see that in your render, it doesn't look just completely smooth and out of place. So then we can do, we'll just hide a large portion of everything else. Allows us to see this. So you notice I'm just using a lot of strokes in all different directions, just layering them on top of each other. And that way, after a while, I start to get a little bit more of kind of a bumpy pattern versus just a brushstroke pattern. You can definitely help this effect along a lot too by varying your brush size. Okay, now I'll just go ahead and leave that as is. Go ahead and hit Alt-B to reveal everything else. And I might try and go in and do just a little bit of the same thing along the bottom of the mouth, but I'm really not going to worry about it too much, although I can also actually just draw on the bottom side and just draw in a negative direction, so holding down Control. I can do much the same thing. Okay, there we go. And if we want, we can add in a bit more to the tongue, but I'm really not going to worry about it at this point. Let's smooth that tip out a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch back into object mode, and let's just go ahead and jump this up to level 7, and we'll unhide to view the rest of our mesh. And so here we can see our basically complete werewolf. And let me just check my time real quick. Well, actually, we're looking pretty good. And so there we have it. That's basically the werewolf there. We might do a few tweaks on, well, no, I'm not going to worry about it. We're getting pretty short for time, so we won't worry about doing any final tweaks. We can always do that towards the end. So for the time being, I'm going to leave this where it's at. We've got a fairly decent mesh put together. The teeth might be a little bit small, but that's all right. We're not going to worry about that. So we're just going to save our model, and I will see you on the next part on sculpting the human head side of things, and then we'll actually get to put together the transformation and see everything come together in a final effect.